There is a kind of tiredness that only settles in after a long day, the kind that sits behind the eyes and asks quietly to be let down into something soft. Tonight, that is what we are going to do together. We are going to drift through the quiet corners of One Piece, the parts of the story that most fans walk past without ever slowing down to notice. Not the battles, not the shouting, just the small, true things. The details Eiichiro Oda tucked into 30 years of pages, 150 of them gathered here, so you can close your eyes somewhere in the middle and not feel like you missed anything important. If that sounds like a good way to end your day, you're welcome to subscribe before you settle in, and if you'd like, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. Now get comfortable, let your shoulders drop, and let's begin. The first place to start is not the Grand Line. It is Kumamoto, the quiet southern city where a boy who had never seen the ocean up close decided at 4 years old that he was going to spend his life drawing pirates. Fact 1. Oda has said the decision never wavered, not once, through decades of work that would eventually make him one of the most read authors on the planet. Fact 2. He chose pirates specifically because they answered to no one, a freedom that a child raised far from any harbor found more interesting than any sword or superpower. Fact 3. His early submission, a short story about a bounty hunter, already carried the loose, elastic art style that would define One Piece before One Piece existed. Fact 4. He trained under other Shonen Jump artists before starting his own series, absorbing pacing and panel rhythm, the way a sailor learns currents by feel rather than formula. Fact 5. 2 entire prototype chapters, both called Romance Dawn, existed before the version readers know, each one a slightly different sketch of the same dream. Fact 6. In those earlier drafts, Luffy's personality was quieter, more withdrawn, and Oda deliberately rewrote him louder because he understood a story this long needed a heart that could not be missed. Fact 7. Shanks was present in every version because the gift of the hat was never a detail Oda added later, it was the seed the whole story grew around. Let your breathing slow here, because the next few facts move gently into the world's biggest open question. Fact 8. Oda decided what the One Piece actually is before he ever drew a single panel of the manga. Fact 9. The Japanese title One Piece carries a softer, rounder meaning than the English translation suggests, something closer to a singular wholeness than one prize among many. Fact 10. The treasure sits on an island that did not have a name until Roger's crew arrived and gave it one. Fact 11. That name, Laugh Tale, exists because of what actually happened there. The laughter was real, documented in the story itself as genuine rather than ironic. Fact 12. Oda has confirmed the reason for that laughter will be revealed, but has kept the specific content of the joke sealed for decades, answering questions about it only by confirming that the question itself is a good one. If you're already starting to feel your eyelids grow heavy, that's all right. Let them. There is nowhere you need to be but here. Part 2. What names are really saying. Every name in One Piece is a small locked room, and Oda hands out just enough keys to make you curious rather than certain. Fact 13. The surname Monkey, shared by Luffy, Garp, and Dragon, follows a family pattern of animal-associated names that Oda has used deliberately across generations. Fact 14. The initial D, appearing in Roger, Garp, Ace, Teach, Law, and others, was addressed once directly by Oda, who said only that its meaning would arrive at a moment when readers would feel it had been a long time coming. Fact 15. Zoro's surname echoes Olivier Levasseur, a real historical French pirate filtered through Japanese phonetics until the resemblance becomes something you feel rather than read. Fact 16. Nami's name simply means wave, a plain, unadorned word for a navigator who reads the sea the way other people read language. Fact 17. Usopp's name folds the Japanese word for lie inside a nod to Aesop, the ancient teller of fables, making him simultaneously a storyteller and the joke about storytelling. Fact 18. The Vinsmoke siblings, Ichiji, Niji, Sanji, Yanji, and Reiju, carry a hidden numerical pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, tucked into their given names, with Sanji sitting quietly at 3. Fact 19. Robin's given name, Nico, carries associations with red and with children in the layered way Oda tends to choose sounds, though he has never confirmed one single fixed meaning. Fact 20. Her home island, Ohara, borrows its name from an old Japanese folk song, a place named for something meant to be remembered, which makes its destruction even heavier. Fact 21. Brook's name is simply the word for a small stream, a gentle, almost accidental sound for a skeleton who spent 50 years utterly alone. Fact 22. Chopper's full name, Tony Chopper, was not given to him at birth, but by the doctor who raised him, a small joke of doubling folded into the saddest arc of his life. If you're comfortable, roll onto your side now, the way you might when a story starts to feel like it's tucking you in rather than keeping you awake. Fact 23. Mihawk's first name, Dracule, is a direct echo of Dracula, a literary reference Oda has openly enjoyed discussing. Fact 24. Trafalgar Law's full name draws from two separate historical sources at once, the naval battle of Trafalgar and the Scottish economist John Law, stitched together into a single pirate surgeon's identity. Fact 25. Crocodile's alias, Mr. Zero, and his warlord history both play on the idea of a number that represents nothing, an emptiness at the center of a man built entirely around ambition. Fact 26. Whitebeard's real name, Edward Newgate, borrows its first name from the historical pirate Edward Teach, even though it is Blackbeard, ironically, who visually resembles the real Teach far more closely. Fact 27. Sengoku's name means literally warring states, a reference to a turbulent era of Japanese history that fits a man who spent his career trying to hold a fractured order together. Fact 28. Even minor characters like Beppo and Wanda carry species-appropriate wordplay, small linguistic gifts left for readers paying unusually close attention. Let all of that settle for a moment. There is no test at the end of this, just let the names wash past like water. Part 3. Devil Fruits, quietly explained. The devil fruits are the story's strangest invention, and their rules were built slowly rather than arriving all at once. Fact 29. In Oda's earliest planning, supernatural power in One Piece was going to be far looser and less mechanically defined than it eventually became. Fact 30. The specific weaknesses, the seawater vulnerability, the one-fruit limit, the awakening state, were added gradually as Oda worked out what kind of story he was actually telling. Fact 31. The name Devil Fruit carries genuine religious weight inside the story's internal logic, with the sea functioning almost like a god and the fruit as a kind of quiet transgression against it. Fact 32. Oda has confirmed that somewhere in the world of One Piece exists a complete catalog of every devil fruit ever recorded, which is how black market dealers are able to identify and price fruits they acquire. Fact 33. Ancient Zoan fruits are written as having something like a will of their own, a personality bleeding into whoever eats them. Fact 34. Chopper's fruit is unusual within its own category because it granted an animal human intelligence rather than granting a human an animal form, a small reversal most readers never stop to notice. Fact 35. Mythical Zoan fruits, the rarest tier, are based on legendary rather than real creatures, which is why Marco's phoenix fruit sits above ordinary zoans in rarity while technically remaining one. Fact 36. When a devil fruit user dies, their power does not vanish. It reincarnates into the nearest fruit, meaning every devil fruit currently in circulation is old, recycled, carrying a history its current owner may never learn. Let your hands go loose against the sheets now. Fact 37. Doflamingo's fruit, the string fruit, was originally conceived with a simpler, less elegant application before Oda expanded it into the puppeteering, world-controlling weapon it became. Fact 38. Katakuri's mochi fruit and Luffy's gum fruit share a conceptual cousinhood, both being flexible, stretch-adjacent powers that Oda distinguished carefully so the two would never feel redundant in a fight. Fact 39. Blackbeard's ability to hold two devil fruits at once breaks a rule the story spent decades establishing as absolute, and the mystery of how remains one of the story's most carefully guarded secrets. Fact 40. Luffy's own fruit was eventually revealed to be a mythical zoan rather than a paramecia, a twist Oda planted the visual groundwork for years before confirming it outright, hidden in plain sight inside Luffy's design the entire time. Let that one sit with you for a moment before we move on. It rewires a decade of assumptions, quietly, the way the best secrets do. Part 4. The shape of the world itself. Now we drift outward, away from people, into geography, because the world of One Piece is stranger and more precisely engineered than it first appears. Fact 41. The Grand Line is split into two halves by the Red Line, a single vertical continent that circles the entire globe. Fact 42. The only way most ships reach the New World is by traveling beneath the ocean through Fishman Island using coating technology built by the shipwrights of Sabaody. Fact 43. The log pose does not let sailors choose their destination. It simply records magnetic signatures and points towards whichever island comes next in a fixed natural sequence. Fact 44. This means the Grand Line, despite its chaos, is technically a road, with an order built into its geography rather than left to chance. Fact 45. The calm belts bordering the Grand Line are regions of total stillness, no wind, no current, and are described in official sources as roughly 200 meters wide, a narrow strip of silence guarding the world's most dangerous ocean. Fact 46. Sea kings, the creatures that inhabit those belts, are large enough to dwarf battleships, and only marine vessels with special coated hulls can cross without being noticed. Fact 47. Water 7's canal-laced architecture draws directly from Venice, a resemblance Oda has confirmed was intentional down to the gondola-style transportation. Fact 48. Dressrosa's warm flamenco-inflected design borrows from Spain and specifically from Andalusia, researched in detail before a single background was drawn. Fact 49. Wano is modeled on Japan's Edo period, a time of closed borders and isolation that mirrors Wano's own 200-year seclusion almost exactly. Fact 50. Skypiea's golden temples and hieroglyphic carvings echo the legend of El Dorado, filtered through research into pre-Columbian South American art. Fact 51. Fishman Island's architecture and mythology draw quiet inspiration from Southeast Asian and Polynesian maritime traditions. Fact 52. Oda keeps an internal reference archive, photographs, clippings, architecture books that his team compiles for him, since his schedule rarely allows him to travel to the real places that inspire his islands. Let the shapes of these places blur together now, Venice and Wano and El Dorado folding softly into one another, the way a half-asleep mind mixes memory with imagination. Fact 53. Zoonatia, the elephant carrying the island of Zoo on its back, is described as thousands of meters tall and has been walking the ocean continuously for 900 years. Fact 54. The red line itself is tall enough to rise above the clouds, which is part of why Marineford was built at one of the few points where the Grand Line actually intersects it. Fact 55. The Florian Triangle, setting of the thriller Bark Arc, still holds an unexplained mystery, enormous silhouettes glimpsed briefly in its fog that Oda has confirmed are real entities, not illusions, still waiting to be explained. Fact 56. The historical inspiration for the Florian Triangle is the Bermuda Triangle, though Oda has noted his version is deliberately confirmed dangerous rather than left ambiguous. If any part of you is starting to feel far away right now, good. That's exactly where this is supposed to take you. If you're enjoying drifting through these, this is a good moment to tap subscribe so the next set of calm One Piece stories finds you easily. Now, let's go somewhere quieter still. Part 5. The Century That Was Erased. Fact 57. The Void Century is a 100-year stretch of history that has been entirely erased from official record, and studying it is punishable by the harshest response the world government can deliver. Fact 58. The only surviving record of that century exists on poneglyphs, massive stone tablets inscribed in a language it is illegal to read, teach, or study. Fact 59. Ohara was destroyed specifically because its scholars were close to translating those records, an act of erasure so total it removed nearly every man, woman, and child on the island. Fact 60. A kingdom existed during the Void Century whose name has been deliberately scrubbed from every surviving account, destroyed by an alliance that would become the 20 founding kingdoms of the world government. Fact 61. Joy Boy is the name most closely tied to that lost century, appearing in 2 known poneglyphs, one on Fishman Island and one on Sky Paya. Fact 62. The Fishman Island poneglyph is not a historical record at all. It is a personal letter of apology addressed to the merfolk, expressing regret over a promise Joy Boy could not keep. Fact 63. That promise is tied to Noah, the massive ark resting on chains beneath Fishman Island, built to carry an entire population to safety. Fact 64. The D initial is implied throughout the story to be older than any family name, described instead as a mark carried by people who inherit some fragment of Joy Boy's unfinished will. Fact 65. There are exactly 4 road poneglyphs distinguished by their reddish color, and all 4 must be read together before the coordinates to Laugh-Tale can be assembled. Fact 66. Those 4 were scattered deliberately, one with Big Mom, one with Kaido, one on Zoo, and one somewhere in the possession of Shanks's crew, placing the keys to the ending in the hands of the New World's four greatest powers. Fact 67. The poneglyphs themselves were carved by the Kozuki clan of Wano, using stone so resistant to damage that the government eventually gave up trying to destroy it and instead made reading it illegal. Fact 68. Robin did not inherit her ability to read the ancient script. She learned it as a small child from her mother, Nico Olvia, before she was old enough to understand the danger the knowledge carried. Fact 69. She was only 8 years old when Ohara fell, which means the most wanted scholar in the world for a time was a grieving child. Let that fact rest for a moment before we continue quietly, without rushing past it. Part 6. Weapons old enough to end the world. Fact 70. 3 ancient weapons are named directly after classical gods, Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus, each representing a different register of catastrophic power. Fact 71. Pluton is an ancient battleship said to be capable of leveling an island in a single shot, with its blueprints hidden for generations in Water 7. Fact 72. Frankie burned those blueprints himself once he understood their danger, choosing to trust that whoever truly needed the ship would find another way to it. Fact 73. Poseidon is not a weapon at all in the traditional sense, but a person, specifically the inherited ability within Fishman Island's royal bloodline to communicate with and command sea kings. Fact 74. The current bearer of that ability is Princess Shirahoshi, whose power has existed since birth, even though its full role in the story is still unfolding. Fact 75. Uranus remains the most sealed of the 3, mentioned by name but never explained, its nature protected by Oda more tightly than almost any other secret in the series. Let your breathing slow to match the quiet of that mystery. Some things in this story are allowed to simply wait, unresolved, the way certain thoughts wait patiently at the edge of sleep. Part 7. Inside the government's armor. Fact 76. The Marine rank structure loosely mirrors real naval hierarchy, filtered through the specific needs of the story's world. Fact 77. A genuine ideological divide runs through the upper ranks, absolute justice versus a more uncertain, human-scaled justice. And it is treated in canon as a real institutional split rather than simple personality difference. Fact 78. Aokiji's departure from the Marines following his clash with Akainu on Punk Hazard was framed less as defeat and more as a refusal to keep serving a philosophy he no longer believed in. Fact 79. A secret Marine unit called SWORD exists, made up of officers who have technically resigned their posts so they can operate outside the normal chain of command. Fact 80. The Seven Warlords system was built as a cynical exchange, amnesty and protection offered to dangerous pirates in return for occasional service, with neither side ever fully trusting the other. Fact 81. Mihawk treated his own warlord title as almost entirely decorative, rarely participating in government operations at all. Fact 82. Boa Hancock became a warlord while her past, and the atrocity behind it, remained completely hidden from public record, a secret the government unknowingly protected by accepting her. Fact 83. Doflamingo's history as a former world noble means his warlord status connected the criminal underworld directly to the government's highest social tier, making his eventual exposure far more than the simple defeat of a villain. Part 8. The Four Who Rule the New World. Fact 84. Whitebeard refused to use the word crew for the people who sailed with him, calling them his sons instead, a choice the story treats as sincere rather than symbolic. Fact 85. His tremor fruit was regarded by marine strategists as potentially the single most destructive individual power in the world, capable in theory of cracking the planet itself. Fact 86. Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard all once served together under the same captain, Rox D. Zebek, before the God Valley incident scattered their crew permanently. Fact 87. Big Mom's episodes of uncontrollable hunger are treated within the story less as a villain quirk and more as a condition her entire kingdom has spent decades learning to manage. Fact 88. Her 36 children were not simple family, but part of a deliberate dynastic strategy, a very different version of the same hunger for family that drove Whitebeard. Fact 89. Shanks remains the most protected mystery among the four emperors, with even his scar, given to him by Blackbeard, left almost entirely unexplained. Fact 90. Shanks personally carried the hat that once belonged to Gold D. Roger and held onto it for years before placing it on a small boy in a coastal village. Let that image sit quietly, a hat passed hand to hand across a generation, small and unremarkable and enormous all at once. If it's helpful, this might be the point where you let your eyes close fully and just listen. Nothing that follows needs to be watched, only heard. Part 9. 9 People, 9 Quiet Truths. Fact 91. Zoro's terrible sense of direction is described by Oda not as a simple running joke, but as something close to a genuine condition, a deliberate contrast to his precision with a blade. Fact 92. Nami secretly drew maps of every island she visited during her years working under Arlong, not because she was ordered to, but because she could not stop herself, cartography being the only freedom available to her at the time. Fact 93. Usopp's father is confirmed to be one of the best marksmen in the world, a member of Shanks's crew, and Usopp's own path as a sniper is framed as an unconscious inheritance rather than coincidence. Fact 94. Sanji's compassion toward hungry people and his refusal to fight with his hands are both tied directly to a childhood of real starvation, planned by Oda long before that history was revealed. Fact 95. Robin's ability to read poneglyphs and the grief of losing her mother and her island are never separated in anything Oda has said, the skill and the sorrow written, in his words, in the same handwriting. Fact 96. Frankie rebuilt every part of his own body that he could physically reach after his accident, leaving the parts he couldn't reach, his own back, to be finished by the friends who loved him. Fact 97. Brooke spent 50 full years completely alone aboard a ghost ship in the Florian Triangle, keeping a promise to wait, because he believed keeping promises was what made him still count as a person. Fact 98. Chopper's devil fruit made him uniquely capable of human-level thought among animals, and Oda has said a human eating that same fruit would simply become gentler, a small joke with an oddly tender idea folded inside it. Fact 99. Nami's obsession with money is described by Oda as her specific love language, care expressed through precise, careful accounting rather than open sentiment. Part 10. The story behind the story. Fact 100. Oda has at points in his career slept as little as 3 hours a night during heavy production weeks, describing sleep as a reluctant necessity rather than a welcome rest. Fact 101. His assistants handle background detail and toning, but every key expression, every piece of dialogue, and every major panel composition remains his alone. Fact 102. He keeps handwritten notes about the ending, character fates, and unresolved mysteries that no one else, not even his editors, has fully seen. Fact 103. He has said he does not outline in a traditional chapter-by-chapter sense, choosing instead to hold the destination clearly in mind and build the road toward it one arc at a time. Fact 104. He made a personal rule early in the series that the ending itself would never change, no matter how much the path leading to it grew or deepened. Fact 105. He has taken multiple extended hiatuses over the years for surgeries and recovery, treated by longtime readers with a mixture of concern and quiet gratitude. Fact 106. Each arc in Oda's own description begins with what he calls the arrival, the specific moment a new place first reveals itself, which he considers one of the most important scenes he draws. Fact 107. He plans the emotional core of every arc, the central wound a character carries, before he plans the villain or the action around it, the feeling always arriving first. Fact 108. Every arc's antagonist is designed as a kind of shadow, a version of what the arc's central character could have become if the world had broken them differently. Part 11. What lives in the margins. Fact 109. The full-color cover spreads that appear between chapters are not simple decoration, and Oda has said they show readers who the Straw Hats are when the adventure isn't happening. Fact 110. An ongoing cover story series has followed side characters like Buggy, Alvida, and Kobe through their own small canon adventures, quietly influencing later plot points. Fact 111. One particularly absurd cover story followed a minor villain accidentally building an underground hot spring resort, included by Oda's own admission purely because he found it funny. Fact 112. As the story moved into the New World, the cover spreads grew more fashion-forward, becoming, in a quiet way, Oda's most personal, artistic outlet within the series. Fact 113. The SBS question corners are treated as canon in the same way the main chapters are, containing confirmed blood types, birthdays, favorite foods, and hidden devil fruit details never shown on the page. Fact 114. Oda has said that a reader who skips the SBS and the cover stories and the author's notes is reading One Piece but not all of One Piece, Part 12. Numbers that were never an accident. Fact 115. The number 17 recurs quietly across the crew's early history, Nami's age when she joined, Luffy's age for most of the story's first half. Fact 116. Laboon waited alone at the edge of the Grand Line for roughly 50 years, a number Oda has tracked with unusual precision across the timeline. Fact 117. The D initial appears across a very specific, deliberately chosen list of names, not a marker of goodness but of connection to an old, unfinished history. Fact 118. The number 3 shapes the crew's internal structure again and again. 3 primary fighters, 3 navigators of different kinds, a pattern Oda has said he finds naturally satisfying without becoming complicated. Fact 119. The story's internal calendar has been maintained without contradiction for decades, with Roger's execution placed 24 years before the main story begins, and the void century 900 years further back still. Part 13. Echoes of a Real Ocean. Fact 120. Goldie Roger's legend and the mystery of where his treasure went echoes the real historical pirate Henry Every, who vanished after an enormous, unexplained heist. Fact 121. Whitebeard's design borrows visual cues from the real Edward Teach, even though the character named Blackbeard is someone else entirely, a reversal Oda clearly enjoyed. Fact 122. Trafalgar Law's name fuses a naval battle and a financial economist into a single identity, a very Oda kind of layered joke. Fact 123. Mihawk's first name is a direct literary nod to Dracula, chosen, in Oda's words, because the world's greatest swordsman deserved the most ominous name available. Fact 124. Every crew's Jolly Roger is treated as a genuine statement of identity rather than decoration, with the Straw Hats flag deliberately kept rough and imperfect in its early appearances because it was drawn by a beginner. Fact 125. Whitebeard's cross and crescent flag design echoes real maritime heraldry associated historically with protection and old authority. Fact 126. Luffy's flag quietly honors Shanks, with the 3 scars across the skull's eye, matching the 3 scars Shanks carries in real life, a tribute hidden in plain sight for years. Fact 127. Blackbeard's 3-faced skull flag was drawn before his second devil fruit was ever revealed, meaning Oda encoded a future twist directly into the background art long before readers had any way to understand it. You're doing so well staying with me this far in. If your eyes have already closed, that's exactly where this was meant to lead you. I'll keep going, softly, for anyone still listening. Part 14. The Voices Behind the Faces. Fact 128. The anime has aired continuously since 1999, making it one of the longest-running animated productions in television history. Fact 129. Mayumi Tanaka has voiced Luffy in Japanese for the entire run and has described the character less as a role she performs and more as a friend whose voice happens to come from her. Fact 130. Ikue Otani, who voices Chopper, is the same actress behind Pikachu, a coincidence fans discover and then can never quite stop noticing. Fact 131. The early English dub, produced by 4Kids, heavily altered violence, names, and story content, and is now remembered mostly as a historical curiosity rather than a faithful adaptation. Fact 132. Funimation's later unedited dub restored the story closely to its original form and built a cast that has remained remarkably consistent across decades. Fact 133. Colleen Clinkenbeard, who voices Luffy in English, was originally cast only as Boa Hancock and won the Luffy role after volunteering an unplanned test read the studio simply couldn't turn down. Part 15. The jokes that never stopped being funny. Fact 134. Zoro's inability to walk in a straight line has grown, in Oda's own telling, from a simple joke into a genuine, consistent piece of his character. Fact 135. Sanji's dramatic reactions to beautiful women exist specifically so he is never allowed to become simply cool, always tethered back to something a little ridiculous. Fact 136. Nami's precise, unsentimental accounting of every berry earned and spent was designed early on as an alternative way of expressing affection, logistics standing in for tenderness. Fact 137. Oda often uses the SBS format to slip real canonical information past readers' inside jokes so absurd they laugh before realizing they just learned something true. Fact 138. The SBS's tone, playful, a little embarrassed, endlessly warm, reflects, by Oda's own description, 30 years of genuine delight in sharing this world with the people reading it. Part 16. Alabasta, Marineford, and what they were really about. Fact 139. Crocodile's entire scheme in Alabasta was built around a deliberate irony, a supposed protector using his official status to quietly destroy the country he was meant to guard. Fact 140. Oda planned from the very beginning that Vivi would not join the crew permanently, not because she wasn't worthy, but because her story needed something the crew's ongoing journey couldn't offer her. Fact 141. Robin was placed inside Baroque works specifically so her introduction would feel disorienting, planting just enough distrust that her later arc about belonging would land with full weight. Fact 142. The poneglyph hidden beneath Alabasta, referencing Pluton, was placed there as proof. The ancient weapons storyline was part of Oda's plan years before it was ever fully explored. Fact 143. Oda has called the Marineford arc the most emotionally difficult thing he had written up to that point, not because of its complexity, but because of how long he had to sit with an ending he already knew was coming. Fact 144. Ace's final act, turning back to protect Luffy instead of running, was designed as a direct mirror of their entire childhood relationship, the same instinct that had defined him his whole life. Fact 145. The 2-year time skip that followed was never intended purely as a power-scaling device, but as a structural pause, a stopping point the story itself needed before it could keep moving. Fact 146. Each Straw Hat's individual training location during that skip, Zoro with Mihawk, Nami at Weatheria, Chopper in Torino Kingdom, and the rest, was chosen specifically to give each of them the particular growth only they needed. Part 17. The Ones Who Want to Burn It All Down. Fact 147. The Revolutionary Army's stated goal is not reform of the current government but its full replacement, a genuinely radical position the story never asks readers to soften. Fact 148. Dragon, Luffy's father, chose to leave his son in the East Blue with Garp, rather than raise him inside a life of revolution, a decision the story has never fully explained. Fact 149. Sabo's survival, memory loss, and eventual recovery of his identity during the Dressrosa arc span years of in-world time, and both of his identities, the runaway noble's son and Dragon's closest subordinate, are treated as equally real rather than one replacing the other. Part 18. The Last Fact and the Quiet After It Fact. 150, the last one for tonight, is maybe the simplest. Oda has said in more than one interview that he thinks of the entire volume, the chapters and the covers and the SBS and the margins, as one complete experience, and that a reader who only reads part of it is reading one piece of One Piece, but never quite all of it. There is always another detail tucked somewhere in these pages, always another layer waiting for a reader patient enough to notice it. That, more than any treasure at the end of the world, might be the truest thing anyone has ever said about this story. Zu, the Elephant Island, carries a detail easy to miss entirely. The Mink tribe's oral history describes Zunisha's walk as a punishment tied to the void century, a debt still being paid 900 years later without complaint. And Oda has left the actual crime unexplained, which means an entire species is living out the consequences of something none of them witnessed. Amazon Lily, home of the Kuja tribe, is populated entirely by women, and its warriors are trained from childhood in haki use at a level most of the rest of the world never reaches, something Oda has attributed to the island's isolation, allowing a purer, less interrupted style of combat education to develop over generations. Punk Hazard, half frozen and half burning, was originally a testing ground for a weapon so dangerous that its consequences are still visibly scarring the island decades later, and the coexistence of fire and ice across a single landmass was, in Oda's words, meant to visually represent the aftermath of something the government would rather the world forget entirely. Let your thoughts move slowly across each of these now teacup towers. Snow beside fire, an elephant still walking after 9 centuries. None of it needs to make complete sense right now. It only needs to be pictured gently, the way a half-formed dream pictures things. Part 19. Weapons, fighting styles, and the logic beneath the battles. Haki, the mysterious force underlying most of the story's real power scaling, was introduced gradually and only fully systematized once Oda felt the story had grown large enough to need it. Observation haki allows a fighter to sense danger and intention before it arrives. And Oda has confirmed that its most advanced form allows brief glimpses into the near future, a power so significant that only a small number of characters in the entire story have ever been shown to reach it. Armament Haki, which allows a fighter's body or weapon to become momentarily unbreakable, carries the specific narrative function of being the one force capable of harming Logia users despite their intangible bodies, closing what would otherwise be an unbeatable loophole in the power system. Conqueror's Haki, the rarest of the three, is described in story as an aura of command so overwhelming it can knock weaker-willed people unconscious simply by being present. And Oda has said the number of people in the entire world capable of using it can likely be counted without running out of fingers more than a couple of times over. Zoro's swordsmanship follows a specific three-sword style unique to him, and Oda has confirmed the style was inspired partly by real historical multi-sword schools of Japanese swordsmanship, adapted and exaggerated for a story that needed its swordsman to feel physically impossible without ever feeling arbitrary. Sanji's rule against using his hands in a fight, tied directly to his identity as a chef who refuses to damage the tools of his real craft, forced Oda to design an entire kicking-based combat style distinct from anything else in the cast, built from the ground up rather than adapted from an existing martial tradition. Frankie's weaponry, cannons and lasers, built into his own cyborg body, reflects the specific engineering culture of Water 7, and several of his more absurd inventions were confirmed by Oda to be based on genuine shipbuilding tools, exaggerated into combat use. Law's room ability, one of the most conceptually unusual powers in the entire series, allows him to manipulate space itself within a defined radius, and Oda has said, designing the visual language for something as abstract as spatial manipulation was one of the harder ongoing challenges of drawing the New World arcs. Let these details blur together softly now, swords and space and steel legs, all quietly circling the same idea, that in this world, power is never simply given. It is built piece by piece out of who a person already was before they ever needed to fight. Part 20. Small lives in the background. Not every important detail in One Piece belongs to a straw hat. Laboon, the whale who waited at the edge of the Grand Line for decades believing Brook's old crew would return, is described by Oda as one of the story's purest expressions of loyalty, an animal capable of holding a promise for longer than most people manage to hold anything at all. Bartholomew Kuma's transformation into an emotionless enforcer for the government was, Oda has confirmed, a sacrifice made willingly, trading away his own remaining humanity to protect the people he cared about from a fate he judged worse, a detail that recontextualizes every cold, mechanical appearance he makes afterward. Dr. Kureha, who raised Chopper on Drum Island, is confirmed to be considerably older than her appearance suggests, and Oda has used her, in interviews, as a quiet example of the kind of background character he enjoys building fully formed, even though her total page time is small. Rayleigh, Roger's right hand, spent years after Roger's death working quietly as a coding specialist in Sabaody, deliberately avoiding the spotlight, and Oda has said Rayleigh's choice to live modestly in the shadow of his own legend was meant to show a version of freedom that doesn't require constant recognition. Tom, the master shipwright, who built both the Oro Jackson and the Going Mary's predecessor vessels, never appears alive in the main story, and yet his influence, through Frankie, through Iceberg, through the very existence of Pluton's blueprints, threads through nearly the entire back half of the East Blue and Water 7 storylines. Otohime, Shirahoshi's mother, dedicated her life to peace between fishmen and humans, and was killed before that peace could be secured, and Oda has confirmed her death was deliberately left partially unresolved in its details, a wound the story returns to rather than moves past. Let each of these people rest in your mind for just a moment. The whale, the doctor, the shipwright, who never got to see what became of his work. None of them carry a bounty poster. All of them carry the story anyway. Part 21. Details drawn and never explained. Some facts in One Piece are less about answers and more about the specific shape of a mystery Oda has chosen to leave sitting in plain sight. The giant straw hat sealed in a chamber beneath Mary Joaz has never been fully explained, but its design matches Luffy's hat closely enough that Oda has confirmed without elaborating that the two are connected in meaning. The Gorosei, the 5 elders who sit above even the 5-star admirals in the government's hierarchy, were kept almost entirely off-page for the majority of the series, a deliberate choice Oda has described as reflecting how real power tends to stay hidden until circumstances force it into view. Imu, the figure seated on the empty throne long rumored to exist above even the Gorosei, was confirmed as real only after decades of reader speculation, and Oda has said the slow, patient reveal was always the plan rather than a response to fan theories. The specific model and history of the ship Noah, resting beneath Fishman Island for 900 years, waiting for a promise that still has not been kept, remains one of the story's oldest unresolved threads, planted before most currently running plotlines even existed. The scar over Shanks's eye, given to him by Blackbeard under circumstances never shown on the page, is one of the few pieces of major character history Oda has confirmed exists without confirming a single detail about how it happened. Let each of these open threads settle into the quiet, the way an unfinished thought settles right before sleep, present, acknowledged, and not urgent to resolve tonight. Fact 150, the last one for tonight, is maybe the simplest. Oda has said in more than one interview that he thinks of the entire volume, the chapters and the covers and the SBS and the margins, as one complete experience, and that a reader who only reads part of it is reading one piece of One Piece, but never quite all of it. There is always another detail tucked somewhere in these pages, always another layer waiting for a reader patient enough to notice it. That, more than any treasure at the end of the world, might be the truest thing anyone has ever said about this story. We have gone a long way together tonight, from a 4-year-old in Kumamoto who had never seen the sea, all the way out to the edge of the New World and back again. Let your body feel heavy now, the way it does when a long, good story is finally winding down. There's nothing left to hold on to. Just let it go and let the quiet take over from here. If this helped you drift off, there's another calm One Piece story waiting just to the left whenever you're ready for it. Until then, sleep well. Inside the government's armor. Fact 76. The Marine rank structure loosely mirrors real naval hierarchy, filtered through the specific needs of the story's world. Fact 77. A genuine, ideological divide runs through the upper ranks, absolute justice versus a more uncertain, human-scaled justice. And it is treated in canon as a real institutional split rather than simple personality difference. Fact 78. Aokiji's departure from the Marines following his clash with Akainu on Punk Hazard was framed less as defeat and more as a refusal to keep serving a philosophy he no longer believed in. Fact 79. A secret Marine unit called SWORD exists, made up of officers who have technically resigned their posts so they can operate outside the normal chain of command. Fact 80. The Seven Warlord system was built as a cynical exchange, amnesty and protection offered to dangerous pirates in return for occasional service, with neither side ever fully trusting the other. Fact 81. Mihawk treated his own warlord title as almost entirely decorative, rarely participating in government operations at all. Fact 82. Boa Hancock became a warlord while her past and the atrocity behind it remained completely hidden from public record, a secret the government unknowingly protected by accepting her. Fact 83. Doflamingo's history as a former world noble means his warlord status connected the criminal underworld directly to the government's highest social tier, making his eventual exposure far more than the simple defeat of a villain, the Four, who rule the New World. Fact 84. Whitebeard refused to use the word crew for the people who sailed with him, calling them his sons instead, a choice the story treats as sincere rather than symbolic. Fact 85. His tremor fruit was regarded by Marine strategists as potentially the single most destructive individual power in the world, capable, in theory, of cracking the planet itself. Fact 86. Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard all once served together under the same captain, Rox D. Zebek, before the God Valley incident scattered their crew permanently. Fact 87. Big Mom's episodes of uncontrollable hunger are treated within the story less as a villain quirk and more as a condition her entire kingdom has spent decades learning to manage. Fact 88. Her 36 children were not simple family, but part of a deliberate dynastic strategy, a very different version of the same hunger for family that drove Whitebeard. Fact